Burkina Faso. A landlocked nation in West Africa, rich in culture, resilience, and natural resources, but also a country scarred by conflict, insecurity, and political turbulence. In recent years, Burkina Faso has made headlines not just for its battles against extremist groups, but also for its tense relationship with international organizations, especially the United Nations. Today, we're diving deep into the dramatic story of how Burkina Faso reached a point where it expelled senior UN officials, not once, but twice. A story of sovereignty, conflict, and clashing narratives that continues to shape Africa's geopolitical landscape. Let's rewind to the late 2010s and early 2020s. Burkina Faso, once considered relatively stable, began facing a severe security crisis. Islamist insurgent groups, linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, expanded from neighboring Mali and Niger into Burkinabe territory. Villages were attacked, thousands displaced, and the state's authority began to crumble in vast rural areas. By 2022, nearly 2 million people were internally displaced. Schools were closed. Humanitarian aid was desperately needed. The government in Ouagadougou was under immense pressure. Military coups reshaped leadership. And in this fragile situation, international organizations like the United Nations stepped in with aid, monitoring, and reports. In December 2022, a shocking announcement came from the Burkinabe government. The UN's top representative in the country, Barbara Manzi, the resident and humanitarian coordinator, was declared persona non grata and ordered to leave. The official reason? The government accused her of undermining the country's image, especially after she allegedly withdrew non-essential UN staff from Ouagadougou due to security concerns. For the Burkinabe authorities, this was an insult. They claimed the UN was exaggerating the crisis and painting the country as a failed state. Internationally, the expulsion raised alarms. How could one of the world's poorest and most vulnerable countries push away the very institution meant to help it? But the expulsion was not just about one official. It reflected a growing shift in Burkina Faso's politics. The military junta, led by Captain Ibrahim Traoré, took power in 2022 with promises to restore security and sovereignty. Traoré was openly critical of Western influence, including the French military presence in Burkina Faso. By 2023, French troops were expelled, and Burkina Faso began pivoting towards new partners, Russia, China, and regional allies. Meanwhile, the humanitarian crisis deepened. Reports of mass killings, including by both jihadists and government-aligned militias, grew louder. The United Nations continued documenting human rights abuses. But to the junta, these reports looked like interference in domestic affairs. Fast forward to August 2025. The United Nations released a report titled Children and Armed Conflict in Burkina Faso. It was damning. The report documented serious violations against children, killings, forced recruitment, and displacement. And importantly, it said these abuses were not only carried out by jihadist groups, but also by forces allied with the Burkinabe government. For the junta, this was unacceptable. They accused the UN of publishing a biased, unverified report, without properly consulting the government. Within hours, they made a decisive move. The UN resident coordinator, Carol Flores-Marexniak, was declared persona non grata and ordered to leave the country immediately. This second expulsion sent shockwaves through the international community. Human rights groups like Human Rights Watch condemned the decision, saying it showed Burkina Faso was trying to silence accountability. The United Nations expressed deep regret, warning that such expulsions would undermine humanitarian aid and monitoring efforts. But inside Burkina Faso, many citizens, frustrated with years of foreign intervention and broken promises, rallied behind their government's stance. The message was clear: Burkina Faso was asserting sovereignty, even at the cost of isolating itself from powerful international institutions. So what does this all mean? On one hand, Burkina Faso's government insists it is reclaiming independence, rejecting what it sees as neo-colonial interference from the West and international organizations. On the other, expelling UN officials could leave millions of Burkinabe without critical aid, monitoring, and support at a time when they need it most. And geopolitically, this aligns Burkina Faso closer with new partners like China and Russia, who may offer investment and military support without asking difficult human rights questions. The story of Burkina Faso versus the UN is not over, it's part of a bigger struggle over Africa's future, sovereignty, and the role of global powers on the continent. Burkina Faso has now expelled top UN officials twice, in 2022 and in 2025. Each time, the move symbolized more than just a diplomatic dispute. It was about identity, independence, and the country's search for a new path in a rapidly changing world. As the dust settles, one question remains: will Burkina Faso's bold defiance lead to true sovereignty and stability, or deeper isolation and suffering for its people? Only time will tell.